Okay. Over here, my birch tree forest is nearly dry, but still wet enough that I should be able to add to it fairly easily. So I'm happy with the way these like little shrubs kind of collected a bunch of the darker paint, and they're really sticking off the background nicely, which is sort of a pleasant surprise. That doesn't always work the way you think it's going to, which, you know, sometimes it kind of backfires on you and you don't get the effect that you think you're aiming for. So I'm mixing up my orange and blue combination over here to make a kind of a brown gray. To add just a few, like I don't want to go crazy, but I want to add a few like little like saplings in this fall forest. They're kind of in here with my birch trees, so just sort of trying to be really cautious of making this as skinny as I can get it to be. Might have to switch to a smaller brush. Always, if you feel like you don't have the control with the bigger brush, those smaller brushes are on my counter up by my desk, so this guy's a little floppy, but we'll make it work. So I don't, like I said, I don't need a ton of trees back here. I just want a few. Like thinking forest in the fall, a couple of little saplings. Try not to go crazy with my addition of trees. But I do want them to feel like they're attached to the ground. Maybe this guy's gonna end up a little bit bigger than I originally thought. I don't know how many more of those I really want to add. What I do need to add though is I'm gonna just add a little bit more blue to this color, the color that I was just using. And I need to come back here and I need to give my birch trees some shadows. I need to have there be some shadows just in general here on my forest floor, right? It's not really a brilliantly sunny day here in the forest of Mrs. Hughes. So just mixed up a bit of a purple too that I'm gonna just pop in here. It's a little darker than maybe I thought it was gonna be, but. And now before that's dry, I'm gonna take my paintbrush, I'm gonna squeeze it, and I'm just gonna pull some of that out. So what I'm doing is just making a kind of a shadowed effect and giving my landscape a distinct ground. Okay. I can squeeze my paintbrush dry and just sort of pull out some of these lighter sections. And I can go back in now and I can lighten up a part of my tree trunk if I like. Okay, so I have this effect now of a few trees in the forest with these birch trees that I've drawn. So I'm gonna clean my paintbrush now and I'm gonna squeeze it dry and I'm gonna come back here now to my birch trees and I'm gonna clean up their edges. So you can just see I'm moving the paint along the edges of the birch tree to just use the paint that, like when I was painting, that got on there to give them, one, the sensation of being in front of the background, and two, oops, that spot was wetter than I thought it was, to kind of clean up, or to give them a little bit of color, because birch trees aren't perfectly white. And so a little bit of that's gonna seep in, and that's gonna be fine. I need to clean my paintbrush again. I'm gonna squeeze it dry again. And I'm just scrubbing a little bit along the end, just edge, just to soften this effect. And like I said, as I bump, my background is not particularly dry. As I bump that, some of that paint is coming on my birch trees too, and that will be okay. I need to scrub some of that off. But some of that actually will work quite nicely because typically the bottoms of these are a little darker. So I'm gonna just kind of scrub at the edge of this again. Just kind of giving my birch tree a shadowed side. And you'll see that as long as I keep them lighter than the background, they still feel white, right? So I'm gonna go back to the color that I used for my trees here in the background. And I'm gonna be very careful to add a couple branches on my birch tree. There shouldn't be a lot. You should have pictures of some birch clumps at your table. You'll notice that they will tend to have branches kind of more towards the top. The bottoms tend to be kind of empty and bare. And that we tend to see a lot of the branches. So I'm just gonna put a couple on. Don't want to go overboard. Some of them can overlap onto the front, and that's fine. The other thing I'm going to do is give the bottom of the tree just some distinct shadows and texture. So that first, that's a way too dark. So I just squeeze my paintbrush dry, clean my paintbrush off. Squeezed it dry, and I'm going to add some of this texture that happens on birch trees here at the bottom. And if you look at the photos that are at your table, on the back of those storms, there are different sorts of trees that you can look at photographs for. No perfectly clean water left, so this is going to affect my ability to pull this out of here. So remember, if you feel like they're getting too dark, you can scrub with your paintbrush, clean water, push straight down. Don't scrub with a paper towel, and you can see how it was able to lift off some of this color that I felt was getting to be too dark. There we go. Now, like, I'm nearly done with that one. Not quite. I need to add some fall leaves. So I'm going to mix up some orange, but I'm going to put some yellow in it a little bit to soften it. And just like yesterday when we kind of splashed leaves on our tree, that is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna attempt to splash. I can grab some like darker brown as well and add some darker brown. You don't want to do this until you're super sure that your branches are dry. All right, so you can see I know that those birch tree leaves in the fall are yellow. So I'm mostly building these couple of trees that are here, making sure to leave sky holes. Like, I don't want the tree to get too solid. It will not look as convincing if I make it completely solid. So I want to make sure that there's some space in between where I've put the branches. And I can go ahead and where I want the ends of the branches to not show as much, I can just kind of scrub just the tiniest bit so that I get a little bit of a shadow that sits there. You know, we can always kind of see a little bit between, so not super worried if they're not perfectly. I can see a little bit of branch, I guess, between. Trying to get my brown leaf off my birch tree. So now I'm gonna clean my paintbrush, and I just wanna add some brighter yellow leaves over here for my birch tree. So, and I'll have to finish some details on that birch tree, but the birch trees are kind of best done over 2 days. So by then I'll be back in class and you guys can ask me questions and I'll probably show you again, but I'm going to see if I can get this to splatter. I'm not having good luck with splatter here tonight. There we go. So I just want some lighter branches, lighter leaves up here for my birch tree. I'm gonna grab some brighter, a little bit brighter yellow. Try to get a little bit more water. And they can go over the top of that other tree so that the effect is that my birch tree is in front of these other trees over here. So you can see that that paint kind of mixed together. And I'm just kind of making some of the real little splatters into a little bit bigger blobs as I go. Now this thing has to completely dry now before I can finish putting the details on my birch tree.